Wow, it's a pretty remarkable day and week when you think about it, when the two most successful football coaches the game has ever known are out in the same week. I'll add Pete Carroll from Seattle, or formerly from Seattle, to the list. Nick Saban retires, wins 7 championships along the way. Bill Belichick is forced out after 6 Super Bowl wins. It's not all that surprising. And Pete Carroll, who was the head coach of the Seahawks, is fired. He put away 2 national championships and a Super Bowl win. Saban and Belichick are the most successful coaches the sport has ever known. How weird is it going to be? Now think about this. How weird is it going to be to look at the Alabama sideline and there's not Saban? It's just going to be bizarre. That's going to take a while. Then, how weird will it look to see a Patriots sideline and there's no Bill Belichick? You can even add to that, of course, because he's probably not done, doesn't want to be done. How weird is it going to look to see him on a Falcon sideline, a Charger sideline? I've got another idea, a landing spot, by the way, that I think just came into play even though the job's not open yet. Yeah. It's not as obvious as you think. So I'll say this up front, that, my gosh, the network where I am right now with this giant sign next to my face has practically eulogized these guys today. It's like, lighten up, everybody. They're not dead. Bill Belichick was fired in the best way possible. It was the right call. It was the right call, and he's not dead. The firing could not have been handled any better by either side. And Saban quit after, I would argue, one of his better coaching jobs of the last 10 or 15 years. And Pete Carroll was fired, and I'm not quite sure why. He didn't like it. I'll start with Saban, because there's going to be a lot of intrigue, and certainly in the state of Texas. So here's the thing about great coaches. Over time, great coaches win in different ways. Okay, so they are able to bring in different personnel. They're able to change personnel. They're able to adapt with rules and changes in the game. They're able to adapt to styles. They win in different ways. I didn't say they win only one way. They win in different ways. That's what great coaches do. And he won with ridiculously great defenses, some of which were regarded as the best of all time in the college game. But if you take a look at the last 6 years, it's a completely different looking team with different looking personnel, lighting up scoreboards in a completely different way. I mean, think of how many quarterbacks and receivers Saban put into the NFL that you see now. And that's all over the past 6 years. I looked this up. This is extra nerdy, but it should tell you about the guy's career. And remember what I said. Great coaches win in different ways. The 2011 team for Saban allowed 8.2 points per game. They allowed 3 yards per play. They threw a shutout in the BCS championship game and gave up 14 points only once the entire season. It's regarded as one of the best defenses in all of football. 2008 to 2017, he ranked either first or second in defense for 10 straight years. Okay? Then you go 2008 to 2018 to 2022, they were in the top 5 in offense all those years. Completely different ways. Completely different personnel, completely different styles of play. It's pretty remarkable. That tells you, and this past year too, tells you what a great coach the guy was. Now, but here's what I'm going to miss about Saban. Here's what I don't think is healthy about Nick Saban retiring. And I'm guessing one of the reasons he's getting out is the exact reason I hate to see him go. Nick Saban was probably because he could pull it off. He had the credibility. He had the power. He is untouchable. But he was a voice of reason about the name, image, and likeness era. And by the way, just so you know, it's nothing more than a slush fund for players. It's a way to hand them cash. Saban said there are no guardrails. He advocated a revenue sharing plan, which is precisely what they needed. He was advocating this stuff almost right away because he saw where it was going. He saw where it was going for him, too. And he had advocated, rightly so again, an NFL-like model to make sure that you've got some sort of system in place with some sort of rules in place for how you manage revenues and how you manage disbursements to players and all that stuff. He knew exactly where this was going. And I think it's part of the reasons why he got out. I do. And I wouldn't blame him. So it didn't happen. You know, what he was advocating, what he was saying, he even went to Capitol Hill, which is kind of embarrassing by itself. But the things that he was advocating, he was the only one able, in a world of super chickens that run the sport. It's a completely spineless sport in terms of management. And it's greedy as heck, too. He was the only one waving his arms saying, it's fine to give the player some power. It's fine to find a way to give the money. What you're doing is out of control, and it's going to backfire. He was saying it early. He was saying it often, and nothing changed. There was no pivot. There was no, old Nick is right about this. We need to put someone in place. We need some management. We need some guardrails. It didn't happen. I can't say for certain that that's the reason why he got out, but it's got to be one of them. He was really unhappy for good reason. Everything he was saying was right. It's true. Giving the power to the players, but there's no recourse. He even said once, and I know it wasn't popular because you're not, as a college coach, you just suck up to 17-year-olds. You tell them whatever they want to hear. But, he said, wait a second, we give these guys the money they asked for. They're now asking for money to go on recruiting visits. And then we give it to them, and then we have no agreements with them. They can just leave whatever they want. So it's not even it's not even equitable anymore. They've got all the power. There's no recourse. There's no agreement. There's nothing in place that says, I'll give you X and then you'll stay here. So it's a greedy industry that even the greatest coach couldn't be heard. It's that greedy. No one would listen to him and no one would change. I hate that the sport's biggest critic, because I think that's what he became, the only critic. I hate that he's out. Because it needed that, and I think he's thrown his hands up and said, man, I'm out. Wait till you see what this looks like in a few years. So I think he knows where it's going. And that's frustrating because he's right about everything he said. So who's going to replace him? Oh, gosh. I don't know. Who should replace him? That's easy to me. Who should? I doubt if it'll happen, but I think I have a suggestion who should. The Steve Sarkisian noise about replacing Nick Saban, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. One of the reasons, now think about this, one of the reasons Saban likely is getting out, or did get out, is the very reason Steve Sarkisian stays at Texas. Okay? Texas is a better job now. Okay? And it's a much better job in the future. All of the financial advantages are at Texas. Okay? All. It's not even close. Steve Sarkisian has, you coach at Texas in this day and time, Steve Sarkisian has what Nick Saban knew he wasn't going to have. Now, some people, I think over time can say, Saban got out because, he's jealous or he couldn't keep up. I don't know that I buy that, but I think some people will say that. But when you think about the reality of the situation is, it would be foolish for Steve Sarkisian to go to the place where the guy's leaving saying, man, I don't have the advantage you do. All the advantages are at Texas. And that's true today, and it's going to be even more so in the future because there's not going to be any rules. So I would be surprised. I don't quite understand why he would go, given the financial advantages, huge financial advantage. And that's basically prize money to players. That's what that is. It's all it is now. Prize money to players. Whether it's a good investment or not doesn't matter. It's prize money to players. So nobody will compete with Texas in the cash grab in the landscape today or in the future. Not only that, not only is there a huge advantage financially at Texas, but think about the other part of this. Wherever you are, whoever it is that replaces Saban, not only are you obviously not wanting to go from Austin to Alabama or practically anywhere to Alabama, just in terms of quality of life, but nobody would want to follow Nick Saban. Why would you want to follow Nick Saban? That can't end well. It's impossible, in fact. Following legends, and there's nobody in the game with the numbers that Saban has, so there's not even a fair comparison. But just if you want to say in general, following legends never works. It can never be comfortable. Following the game's most successful coach of all time is a no-win proposition, to me, at least. I mean, it just wouldn't make sense for Steve Sarkisian to go for any number of reasons, but it would be difficult for anyone to go just out of the knowledge that, wow, that's going to be impossible. It's an impossible standard. It's an impossible standard given the economic realities of the coming years. So, well, wait, Jeff, who should replace him? There's going to be plenty of names mentioned. I assume Sarkisian will be mentioned. I assume DeMeco Ryans will be mentioned. There's a good segment today, and I don't know if anybody has any insights. This was on ESPN earlier today. Paul Feinbaum, who does a show, SEC-like show, is entrenched in that whole world and that space. And so, of course, today he's asked about ideas and suggestions and who it might be that replaces him.
Who do you think is the best candidate to fill those very large shoes?
I think the name you're going to hear the most is Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning spent some time as a graduate assistant at Alabama before moving over to work with Kirby Smart. I think you'll hear a couple of other names. You'll hear Steve Sarkisian. I don't know if this is a reality or not, but I think at some point DeMeco Ryans' name is going to be mentioned. It's unlikely that he would walk away after a masterpiece this year in Houston, but don't forget, he was an All-American at Alabama and is beloved by that fan base. So I think that's where you start. Lane Kiffin's name will be thrown around. I don't know if that's something that will come to fruition, but those are the names you will hear the most prominently.
And the buyout, the money you'll hear as well. We just saw it there with Dan Lanning, a $20 million buyout that they'd have to pay Oregon.
Wow, DeMeco Ryans. Well, that would if DeMeco Ryans said yes, that's done instantly. He's going to be the coach of the year in the NFL. Oh, by the way, they got a playoff game coming up, which I think they might lose, so maybe that makes it more sense. But of course, I mean, that would be a no-brainer. It's a good idea. It's a great thought. Again, if I were DeMeco Ryans and I had C.J. Stroud at quarterback, I had the Rookie of the Year quarterback and quite possibly the Defensive Rookie of the Year a defensive end, I don't know that I'd leave. I really wouldn't, but sure, if Alabama could get him, yeah, go right ahead. I have no problem with that suggestion. I wouldn't do it, and he seems like an NFL guy, Deion Sanders. Here's why. You have to, again, you cannot dismiss the economic reality of the world now, okay? They're not going to be able to afford what they're used to. And again, I think that's part of the reason why Saban is out. Well, why Deion Sanders? He would own the South in recruiting, okay? He took over the worst program in all of college football by far, okay? A place where no one cares about football. It doesn't matter in Boulder. One of the worst programs by far. And he got 56 players to transfer to a place that doesn't care about football at all. Got them to transfer in about a 2-week window. He changed the place immediately. And here's why I would make that suggestion, because you gotta mitigate. I think that's the best word to use. You got to mitigate the economic realities of where you are. Okay, and he solves that problem as well as anyone. So you're replacing a legend with a rock star. That's what you're doing, and the rock star can mitigate some of the star power of Deion Sanders, mitigates some of the economic realities where you just don't have enough money to throw at players. And that's all we're talking about now. Throw money at players. The game is about players. And Deion Sanders is the most dynamic name and dynamic salesperson in the game. He would crush it there. If it's not Alabama now, it's going to be a Florida school in the near future, or somebody in the SEC is going to make the move. Someone's going to get him. And when they do, they've hired a rock star. The game's only rock star. Oh, but Jeff, they only won, they got rolled this past year. You're missing my point. That's a rock star. That's a guy that got 56 players to make a move immediately. That's at Colorado. What do you think he does at Alabama or anywhere in the South? Do I think they would hire Deion Sanders? I assume no. I don't know. I mean, look, if you get D'Amico Ryans and Paul Feinbaum's right, you do that. Absolutely. That seems hard to believe. Texas A&M should have tried with Deion Sanders. Somebody in the South is going to do it. And when somebody does, if it's not Alabama now, when somebody does, look out. The Sarkisian thing doesn't make sense. D'Amico Ryans doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. That'd be cool if they did. Deion Sanders makes a world of sense.